Hello,
Here,
Global Theater. My name is Gerry Fialka. Today is November 22, 2024. Want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. Please subscribe. It's an honor and a pleasure today to be here with Willy Schwarz. Where in the heck you calling in from, Willy?
I am calling from Bremen, Germany, where I have lived since 2000. Lived here for 25 years.
How cool is that? The first question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
The best thing for a human being is to be loved.
Yeah. Well, that's an amazing thing because right here in Venice, California, Eden Abe wrote a song called Nature Boy. In
Oh,
the
yeah.
line, I'm sure you played it or know it. The line in the song is the greatest thing you'll ever learn is to
hmm
love and be loved
hmm
in
hmm
return.
Although, if I may take one small issue, his name wasn't Ibn Abe. His name was, um, it'll come to me in a second. You can Google it.
Yeah, but my friend's been making a documentary on him for 10 years. So
Oh,
there's a lot to go into the whole history of him.
oh, okay.
And what's your favorite form of information, how it comes into you?
Hmm. Well, if it's human information, I'd say not naturally music
Yeah,
in some musical form or another.
yeah.
If it's nature information, bird song, wind blowing,
That's beautiful. They
yeah.
you probably know that guy, Ben Sidran asked Sunrise. He said, "Dude, you worked with Fletcher Henderson. Did he influence your sound?" He goes, "No, the birds and the crickets influence my sound."
Wow, yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure Sun Ra was something else.
Why do you think humans collect or gather information?
Why do humans collect or gather information? Because we're by nature expansive.
Yeah.
I think humans, in one way or another, either want to grow or expand or enrich themselves, or take a sad song and make it brighter. To do a
So
bad paraphrase.
yeah, well, it's so beautiful what you said because you anticipated the next question, which I'll ask anyways. Is this need or want to collect information more innate or more invented?
Hmm. It's both, really. I
Yeah.
think because the collection of information in a strictly academic or scholastic manner is more or less stacking up of facts and figures and whatever. And that's usually coerced pretty well.
It's good.
But
Yeah.
for instance, I go out and I was mentioning the bird song. I'm no ornithologist. And most of the time when I look up, even with my binoculars, all I can see is a silhouette there in the tree, and I can try and notice the shape of its tail and the shape of its beak and about how big it is and so forth. And then I'll go home and I'll try and find out online what that could have been. But there's a natural curiosity, and I tell myself always, why do you have to know the name? Same with flowers, same with trees, same with everything. But there is something innate in us that does want to expand the frontiers of what we currently know, or maybe in hopes of being able to appreciate it more, to enjoy it more.
Beautiful. You're a real wordsmith, even to make the world a better place. Because I love that word cohere. You know, the both thing is good, Willie, because a lot of these questions at the beginning are, is it more this or more that? Of
Mm,
course, both. And I know it depends, but you know what I'm after. It's just more like your hunch and your guess and your feelings. So, do thoughts create emotions?
I would say it's the other way around.
Really? All right.
Yeah.
Fill
I'd
in the
say,
blank. Yeah, go ahead.
well, yeah, I just think in general, emotions come from a much deeper place, and thoughts then sort of come down out of the gray matter to meet them halfway and try and define what it is one is feeling. But
Yeah.
if one feels, for instance, insulted, the first thing you feel is the insult, and then you think, what a motherfucker.
Well, fill in the blank, Willie. I don't know what I think until I,
Feel it.
yeah, see, Joan Didion says, I don't know what I think until I write it. McLuhan
Oh,
says, I don't know what I think until I say it. Can hum-
wow.
can humans think without language?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Uh,
Definitely.
Yeah, Chomsky says a language is not just words. It's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole,
Absolutely.
a whole history that creates what a community is. What do you do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down, what do you do?
I usually swear pretty loud.
I like it because you laughed first, then you said, I swear.
I usually do. I mean, and to be honest, my life these days is not easy. My health is quite severely challenged, so I have a lot of opportunities. There was a great tabla ustad master from Lucknow,
Yeah.
whose name was he was the doyen of the Lucknow tabla gharana, and his name was Afak Hussain
Yeah.
Khan.
Yeah.
So I always invoke the Ustad Afak Hussain Khan.
Yeah, we're going to get into that, the musicality of words and all. Your observations of humans in general, are we more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
It's hard to say. So I'm not sure how to answer that. More thinking or more feeling?
Well, it's funny because we invented the two words, so we think we can separate them, and they're so interconnected.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think you're right.
but Bridget Bardot says, when I make love, I don't think. I'm like, good
Well,
luck.
that's true.
How do you turn your brain off? It's people who meditate go, now think about not thinking.
Yeah, I always like that. The hardest of them all lived the most rigid of them all, I would say, lived just up the road from you in Ojai, and that was Jiddu Krishnamurti,
Of
who
course.
I saw several times back in the 70s, And one time at Carnegie Hall, he came out. There was nothing on that huge stage but a chair and a microphone.
Yeah.
And he continually would, just like his books, his talks were exactly like his books. He said, are you doing this with me? Or are you just listening to me? And we were sitting there said, well, actually, we're doing both. No, you must actually do this yourself. And it's like, this rubber hammer on your head. It's like, oh, I can't handle it.
I love you bringing up Krishnamurti because he comes up later, and so there's a bumper sticker on a car on my street that says, "Don't believe everything you think," and I'm like, well, you could say, "Don't believe everything you feel."
That's a cool bumper sticker. Don't
These,
believe everything you think. Yeah.
yeah, it is.
Well, I think one learned, if I may also project, but because we're probably getting to that also later, but I think that's one thing psychedelics really teach one is don't believe everything you think,
Yeah.
and that words are about this far off the ground and everything else is just like this limitless chasm of phenomena. So it taught me that anyway.
Yeah. It's because Lily Tomlin said reality is just a collective hunch. And then
That's good.
another comedian said, reality is people who don't believe in drugs or something like that. It's funny. So these two are actually from Alan Turing in the 50s.
Oh yeah.
One is thinking a function of the soul.
Thinking is a function of the soul?
Is it? Is
Oh,
thinking?
is thinking a function of the soul? Oh man, the soul, the soul. I've never. I'm very unstable with that word in principle, the soul, because well, I'm a Jew who was brought up Catholic, and and spent years in India and living with a guru in Oakland and whatever. And the whole thing of Atma, Paramatma, soul, Seele, uh, it's a difficult word, and it's, to me, it's pretty much indefinable. Soul. Yeah. It means your innermost core, but it also means your connection to the cosmos, and it means all these different things. It's a word I seldom use. I avoid the word soul because I think it, other than when I'm referring to Wilson Pickett or something.
Well, dude, you sussed it out beautifully. The second question is, can machines think?
Oh man, that's a big one today, isn't it? Yeah, that's a big one today. I just saw, if you don't mind the little detour,
Willy, I welcome tangents.
Oh, okay.
Anecdotes, stories.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, okay, so just today I happened to see a video about ostensibly about Carrara in Toscana, where all the best white marble comes from, where Michelangelo got his marble for all his sculptures and so forth, and Bernini and Canova and all the other. And they now have a robot which basically formulated on 3D printing, refined 3D printing, can carve whole statues out of marble. And the interviewer asked the guy who invented this thing, isn't this like a big, enormous way of cheating? I mean, 95% of the work on this statue is done by artificial intelligence. He said, yeah, but someone had to create that artificial intelligence to do that. And I clicked right off saying, you idiot, they only had to do that once. They only had to do that once, and then they had thousands and thousands of copies. I mean, and then they showed the whole profession of marble carving is going down, down, down because it pays like shit, and all the kids are going into whatever. Yeah, maybe they're going into AI. But Carrara, I've been there. My aunt and uncle had a place very near to Carrara, Pietrasanta, and these people the young people are leaving. There's only like 2 or 3 families left that do this. Yeah. So anyway, can machines think? Well, of course, it depends on how you define thinking. I don't think they can replace human thought. I don't think so. I don't think that as far as they will develop these creations to mimic, to imitate, but there we get back to feeling. Because I don't think a machine can feel. I kind of refuse to believe. Maybe I'm just being obstinate, but I don't think that a machine, even with the millions of calculations you feed into it of how people normally would react here and then and there, how is this machine going to really feel its own sensations and not just millions of data, ones and zeros that have been programmed into it? But it's a very crucial question nowadays, and it worries. Have you ever heard of these AI songs? some of them are pretty damn good. It's like in comparison to the shit you hear on the radio. And all they're doing is, mixing and matching and going through algorithms and stuff. So literature, have you heard Stephen Fry rail on about this? He has a very good rant.
Yeah.
He
But
has
I think AI is in its infant stage, and it's our job to raise it well. But I mean, Conlon Nancarrow just punched holes in paper and created amazing music. That in a way is zeros. And we did a Zoom with Conlon Nancarrow years ago before there was
that? Excuse me, who's that?
He's a avant-garde composer named Conlon Nancarrow.
Conlon Nancarrow, I don't know.
You gotta look him up. He sounds like Boogie Woogie piano speeded up. I'll send you a link. But basically, his art form was piano rolls.
Right.
So he was just punching holes in paper. And one time we talked to him directly, and we said, "Well, there's this one kind of hole on this piano roll. We're not sure if you intended it or not." And he yelled at us and says, "Quit hassling me. I don't know." Because he had the human factor in there. And so
Nancarrow is his name. Nancarrow.
Conlon, CONLON, Nancarrow. CARROW. Kronos Quartet, everybody loved. We first learned of him because Frank Zappa brought him up, and then Laurie Anderson brought him up. And I mean, he is an amazing composer.
Wow.
But in a way, he was doing that kind of thing. Well, you're not playing the piano, dude. All you're doing is punching holes in a paper roll. Well, that's a form of making music, but he showed his humanity. There was humanity. Willie, do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
No, wait a minute. Before we get to another cosmic question, back to piano rolls.
Yeah.
Have you heard the piano rolls that were done by classical pianists at around 1900 in the late 1890s? And
my friend collects them. I'll have him play me some.
Yeah.
What is your point? What were you going to say about it?
The point is that these guys played pieces into the software.
Yeah.
I don't know if Conlon Nancarrow does that.
Yeah.
Spontaneously, but they had a partitura of Brahms or whatever was in front of them, and their job was to play this into the piano roll. And there's a guy who played a strong role in my parents making it to America in 1940. His name was Osip Gavrilovich.
Yeah.
And he was a famous pianist who for some years directed the Detroit Symphony Orchestra. And he played marvelous versions. I don't think he was ever made a sound recording, but he made wonderful piano rolls. And yeah, like I say, this was when we're back to thinking and
feeling,
well, obviously you can, those piano rolls are very sophisticated. They had all the pedals working and everything. It was
it's close to your instrument, the accordion. No, it is. What's the valves in the air being pushed through? Because my friend plays his piano rolls backwards sometimes, and it's
wow.
He can feed it in backwards, but it's back to also what you said earlier, Willie. Someone still invented the machinery and put feeling and thought into it.
And you know how that came about?
How?
There was this guy in the late 18th century, who invented just such a punch card system for looms for making carpets.
Oh,
in
really?
England. Yeah. I heard that recently. And then somebody else, don't ask me the name, said, hey, this could be, actually, this was way back in like the 1840s. And those progenitors of modern computers, what's their name? The Huxley's, oh
Yeah.
God, I'm terrible with names, but you know who I mean.
Abacus. It's really the abacus.
Bainbridge, or what was it?
Bainbridge, yeah.
Yeah. Those guys took that idea and said, well, we can do more than we can store information with these things.
Yeah.
And that was a long time ago. It was like 150 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, it's forever expanding. So do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
Right now I'm trying to pursue health.
That's what I'm for. Changing the words. It's me and you versus the wording on the question. So I love change the wording. So does Willy, of all people, I would love to hear you on this one, because does the brain more detect consciousness or create it? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away, and are we more so detecting it or more so creating it?
I believe consciousness is there before the brain is.
Yeah.
I believe we're conscious before we're born, and that the brain develops and tries to perceive what consciousness is, so to speak, from the outside.
Yeah.
Because the brain is not consciousness, in my way of thinking. The brain is an organ that perceives things and has a huge almighty ego attached to it, who thinks this is me. This is me, this is me. I am this. Yeah.
That's two things. Alan Watts says, everybody's trying to figure out who to find themselves, he goes, if you find yourself, you're fucked.
You're finished. Boy, you sure can quote people with.
Sorry, but the other one is, anyways, I love that, the ego. So what's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
Wow, I'm not a physicist.
But I mean, your hunch.
I say they might be the same.
Yeah.
I say they might be the same, because I don't know, but
that's fine.
My guess is that they.
Go ahead.
No, that's it. That was my answer.
That's fine. Audre Lorde, the poet, said you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Yvonne Ray, her colleague, said you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest?
Me personally?
Yeah. It's really, the question is what tool do you most gravitate towards?
Say the quote again. I want to fully grasp it.
It's funny. It's a great quote. Audre Lorde, you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools.
Oh, okay.
So it's just sort of a setup. You put all the questions into the context you want, and then I ask, what new tool do you suggest? You don't have to apply the word new or the quote. It's really, what tool do you most gravitate towards? But you can apply those two intro statements if you want.
The master's house. What does he mean there?
Well, it's a she, and I think she's a black lesbian poet, and she's basically probably saying the master's house is white supremacy or white.
Okay,
like Frank Zappa.
Good, I asked, because I never in a million years would have guessed that.
Yeah. And this is like what Frank Zappa asked. He said, who are the brain police? He didn't say, oh, the brain police are evil corporate capitalists, or the brain police are this voice inside your head. He just asked a question. So it's really, sort of like, what tool do you most gravitate towards? And it doesn't have to be a tangent.
And
You
his
know,
answer was, "We are the other people. We are the other people. You're the other people too."
wow, I'm impressed. They quoted, but Bob Lucas wouldn't play a Zappa song. He was hired to play the music at our wedding, and we said,
Right, you said that.
will you do Love of My Life?" And he goes, "No."
I don't know that tune.
Well, it's just a basic doo-wop R&B song,
Ah,
But
okay.
anyways, We Are the Other People's an amazing song, and I loved hearing you quote it. That's funny.
Hey, just an off the cuff question, Jerry. Do you know Mark Bingham?
Who is he? Tell me.
Mark Bingham is someone you should interview. He really, really is. This is a guy who's uh, we go back a very long way. He was a music producer. He did a lot of stuff with Hal Wilder in New York.
Oh, I know
He
Hal Wilder. Yeah.
he in the 70s had a band in Bloomington called the Screaming Gypsy Bandits, and in various forms, and we made some fabulous music and recordings. He's a genius songwriter, and you should talk to Mark Bingham, and I'm
Oh,
sure
please.
Bob would agree. He's in New
Bob.
Orleans.
Oh, he's in New Orleans. Yeah, no,
Hmm.
I'd love to.
Yeah, we all come out of that Bloomington, Indiana crucible, and
I know all those. I've interviewed that Dulcimer player. You know him,
oh yeah, Malcolm,
Malcolm. Yeah,
right? And the Brecker brothers came from Bloomington.
I didn't know
Oh
that.
yeah, Peter Erskine, Colin Walcott, Alan Capua. They all went to the IU School of Music Jazz program, which was the first place in the country you could get a doctorate in jazz under the tutelage of the great Dave Baker, who used to play trombone, I think, with Stan Kenton and so forth. But he landed himself a prof gig, and people streamed there from all over the country. And what happened in the late 1960s was a student band formed there with some of the above mentioned people, Michael and Randy Brecker, and Randy Sankey, and Eric Long, and um, a big band. It was the first rock big band that ever existed. And the Brecker brothers went to New York and they started Blood, Sweat, and Tears, which was the first famous rock band that ever
Yeah.
existed. And Chicago followed, and that was a thing in the 70s for a while. But I would highly recommend, if this is sort of like the chain of interviews, interview Mark Bingham. The guy is
Oh, I
funny.
will. Please
Yeah,
look me up, Willie, because
I will.
I
I will.
also
I promise.
interviewed. You know who else I interviewed recently? I'm pretty sure you know is Andy Mahler.
Oh man, Bob told me he's not well. He saw him recently, and
Yeah,
he came to the funeral of. Now, yeah, people keep
yeah.
passing on. I can't remember who's funeral. They tell me who's
Yeah,
passed on. And Andy Mahler came up, and Bob said he
yeah.
was totally out of it. I mean, he was crazy. And Andy and what's his wife's name?
Yeah, I forgot his wife's name, but we got married. He married us on. I said we had a traditional hippie wedding on Andy Mahler's farm, and Bob Lucas and Dylan Buston played.
Yeah,
And
of
I love
course.
Andy because he's a distant relative of Gustav Mahler.
Oh yeah. He's like a great great grandson or something. Great great nephew of Gustav Mahler.
And it's like Willie and Bob get over it. His greatest song is "Get Over It." you know,
Andy Mahler's.
Andy Mahler wrote a song called "Get Over It."
Oh, I never knew that.
Oh, you got to hear it. It's on YouTube, dude. It is a great song.
With
It's
him singing it?
he on YouTube. He sings it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't
I
know.
think Bob helped him a little, but I think Andy basically wrote the song. But that's
Wow.
amazing. You really told me a lot about. I'm anxious to interview Mark Bingham, but
Yeah.
I didn't know all those people came out of that scene because that's a huge
Yeah, I am.
amount of talent.
Yeah,
With
Gray
people,
Larson and Bill,
Gray Larson. I've interviewed Gray. Yeah.
Dylan Buston, and
Dylan, I've interviewed lots. Yes,
yeah,
yeah.
and a lot of old timey musicians. Hawk Hubbard, who just passed away a few months ago. Robbie Wyatt. I mean, it was and then earlier guys like what was his name? Fiddler.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
and my sort of my Jewish connection, my teacher, I could say, Miles Krassen,
yeah.
Moishe Krassen, who actually, although he's a little humble guy out in Albuquerque, he has hundreds of people. This is a man who's devoted his almost his whole life to the study of esoteric Judaism, the Kabbalah, and so forth, and but at the same time is a rabid anti-Zionist, and we Zoom regularly, and it's good. He's not getting any younger either. Miles is, but
What do you worry about when you go to bed at night, Willie?
I worry about. Oh, it's really silly. It's really silly. I worry about my restless leg syndrome.
Yeah.
Have you know what that is?
Well, I don't know it totally, but I have a little buzzing in my feet sometimes.
Oh
I'm
yeah, yeah. No, restless leg can be really tortuous. It's like
yeah.
it's like a mild form of Parkinson's practically, and
Ah,
they treat it with the same kind of medicine. But the thing is, my body's become so used to that medicine. I know that it works for exactly 6 hours. So if I take it just before I go to sleep, I know I'm going to wake up at 3:30
it's
in the
six.
morning. Ah! So anyway, yeah. I mean, what I worry about when I go to sleep. I don't know if I worry so much. I try and get to sleep.
Yeah. So McLuhan learned from an
There's a way. I'm sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, going to sleep is it's not something you do. It's something you let go of. It's
You
a
let go
release,
of it. Yes.
And so sometimes you can lie there and take many deep breaths, and before you know it, you're gone. But other times, like you say, if you have a lot of yeah.
Yeah.
What were
So
you going to
it's
say about
well,
McLuhan?
well, McLuhan learned from a poet that artists are the antenna of the race. So they're like artists means
Cool.
musician, painters,
Hmm.
songwriters, everything. They're the antenna of the race. They're
That's a
broad,
great expression.
yeah, they're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions so we might learn how to cope with what we don't like about our inventions. So, Willie, I asked you the question Marshall probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. What do you mean by our inventions?
Well, inventions are everything from spoken word, printed word to accordions to AI. And even like religion or philosophy, those are inventions. So I
Yeah.
think what
And what are
happens,
you saying? We ignore those?
well, we ignore them. When artists express themselves, sometimes there's a hidden message, not necessarily by the artist, but they're revealing something. They're sort of like, Toto in The Wizard of Oz. Artists are sort of like just pulling the curtain back and revealing that the emperor's wearing no clothing. So, why do people generally ignore the hidden messages in art? Is what I'm asking.
Well, in the case of the Wizard of Oz, I think it's because they actually prefer the big scary face up there
Yeah,
to the little little schlepper behind the curtain.
a schlepper. That's what he was. He was a schlepper. Pay no attention to that schlepper
Yeah,
behind the
because
curtain.
I mean, look what's happening in America right now.
Yeah,
We've got an absolute raving maniac at the helm. And when people started saying, "Oh, look who he's appointed for this, and look who he's appointed for that," I went to Wikipedia and just typed in list of fired or resigned
yeah.
officials under Trump administration, and there's like hundreds of them. Because
Exactly.
what was his mantra? You're fired. That was
Yeah,
The Apprentice. You're fired. So he'll hire somebody this week, and then.
yeah. Yeah,
But
he just wants people to be faithful. He doesn't want people who do the job.
and that of course that is very dangerous.
Yeah,
Very, very dangerous to have somebody like that. He is an absolute autocrat and narcissist, and
yeah.
doesn't know anything.
But
It's really,
Willie, do
yes.
artists have moral obligation?
I wouldn't say it as a dictum like that, Jerry, because some artists. I mean, I have a friend who was a gallery owner, but he comes out of the graffiti scene.
Yeah,
And he knows that I hate graffiti. I think with there's 98% of it are just tags on buildings. Ugly, ugly, ugly shit.
yeah.
But his point is that, well, these are artists expressing themselves. I say, bullshit. These aren't artists expressing themselves. These are immature 14-year-olds who steal spray paint from the hardware store. And in a desperate little attempt to say I was here,
Clearly, I was here. You're right. Well, there's a lot to go in there, but that leads perfectly, Willie. Do artists have moral obligation?
well, that's what I'm saying. They're moral. When you say moral obligation,
Yeah,
then we're suddenly talking about the broad spectrum of what people consider as morality.
exactly.
So, I mean, some would say artists have a moral obligation not to depict things that, like here, they have laws against hate speech.
Yeah.
So no matter how many tens of thousands are slaughtered in Gaza, you cannot go out on the street and say from the river to the sea. You'll be arrested.
Yeah.
Maybe not in Bremen, but in Berlin.
Yeah.
So what's the moral obligation? What has become a moral obligation as a phenomenon?
Yeah.
I watched an old PBS Masters series yesterday from 2007 about Pete Seeger.
Oh, wow.
Oh man, I cried buckets.
Oh, God.
Because what a difference was in that time.
Yeah.
When the people could actually influence the government. Because we haven't seen that since way back when. And now with the stranglehold of corporate media and social media, it's getting tighter and tighter all the time. It really, really is. I'm not even on that stuff, like I say, but I hear it all around me.
Yeah.
People got demonetized, and people got doxxed, and people got trolled, and people get, and then the idea of the government determining the official version, there's information, disinformation, and malinformation.
Exactly. Well, yeah, that's funny because that documentary on Pete Seeger was
Yeah.
produced produced by his wife Yoshi, and
Yeah.
she's sharp. She said, "Don't whitewash my."
Toshi.
Oh, Toshi, sorry.
Yeah.
And she said, "Don't whitewash my husband. He's a
Yeah.
human being." And they,
Yeah.
a lot of these documentaries just become commercials.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. No, that was really good.
you got to show people with their humanity. And
Yeah.
that's like what Utah Phillips said, another great.
Oh, good old Utah Phillips. Yeah.
He said, "Anarchy is making rules for yourself and not other people. Who's in,
Yeah.
Willie, who's entitled to make the rules?"
Yeah. Good question. But what I especially liked, what you're referring to in that documentary was two things. Joan Baez at one point says about Toshi, in order to be married to a hero, you have to be a saint.
Yeah, that's
And
good.
the other thing I really liked were his kids saying that he made them sleep outside under the snow with no roof over their heads. And I just loved how his daughter and his son both said, "We hated it." I mean, he could be a real hard ass too. But the just the portrayal of that wasn't just all in our minds, man. Stuff was really happening. You see that demonstration at the Capitol. America had never ever seen anything like that before. You know?
And it probably did a lot. It raised awareness big time. It did.
Absolutely.
Berrigan Brothers and Pete Seeger, they're the ones who made me a political activist and a lover of peace and a hater,
Yeah.
and not a warmonger.
Right. Right. And that used to be the shibboleth of the Democratic Party. Now the Democratic Party are the bigger warmongers than the Republican.
Jesus, oh my God.
Yeah.
And then, again, who's making the rules? Like you had the rule in Berlin, you can't do hate speech.
Right.
Who's entitled to make the rule?
Good question. Who is entitled to make the rules? I don't know, but power never gives up. What's that famous quote?
Yeah.
Unchallenged, unchallenged power will just continue to grab. And I've seen that throughout my life. And now we're getting to a juncture where it's getting pretty crucial. It's getting pretty intense. I mean, God, there's enough experts who say we're just, the nuclear scientist clock is like at 14 seconds to midnight or something. Very scary.
Well, it's funny, Willie, because the etymological breakdown on the word freedom is the same thing that Utah said about anarchy. Freedom comes from the word making one's rules for one's own self. So what does freedom mean to you now?
Wow. Where do you get that etymological origin?
You go to etymology.
Etymology.
Etymology online. It's my favorite website. Like every word I come across, I like, wait a minute, where'd this word come from? Well, the funny thing is, though, Willie, you'll love this. All the best, words are an invention. We made them up. So we give credibility to these people who sit in an office and they go, here's where this word came from. Well, how do they know? Well, they just study some pattern. But my favorite words go, of unknown origin.
Yeah.
Well, every word is of unknown origin. Someone made it up. So the coolest words always end up coming from the back alleys of London from the hoodlums.
Partially, for sure. But I've always been very interested in linguistics and philology as well. And especially since I spent so much time in India and Pakistan, the whole question of, the migrations and all this stuff. this mysterious Indo-European thing that even today nobody is sure
Yeah.
where it originated and so forth. Uh, so I find that fascinating, just like you find word origins fascinating.
Yeah, Sanskrit always comes up on word origins,
Yeah, I am.
all the European, and then there's a lot of American words. We make them up too. So
Oh, yeah.
it goes all over the place. But I mean, in basically, what does freedom mean to you now?
Freedom to me means, what does it mean? I mean, freedom is basically the state I find myself in now. I'm I'm a pensioner. I'm an old guy. I don't do that much performing. I play music every day, or try to. Uh, like I say, I'm striving to. Uh, what does freedom mean to me? God, I'm not sure I have an answer for that, Jerry.
Well, are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
Another difficult question. I'm afraid of old ideas that are proposed anew.
Yeah, hello.
Like you have to go to the doctor. I hate that idea.
That's where I got the question from. It's this guy, Charles Kettering. He said, people are very open-minded about new things as long as they're exactly like the old ones.
Yeah, that's right.
Can you conjure up your earliest memory ever, or one of them?
Yeah, one of my earliest memories is hearing Rimsky-Korsakov Scheherazade in the womb.
Oh my God, that is amazing. In the womb.
Yeah. I'm convinced I heard Rimsky-Korsakov Scheherazade. My parents had a record of it, and I'm convinced I heard it in the womb because I was born loving that piece. And I listened to it once a year. I listened to Scheherazade, and I listened to other Rimsky. One of the definitions of freedom is, Jerry, in these last years, I've been listening to all kinds of music online, which I never heard before, trying to just hear everything I can. And I've been doing that since I was, knee high to a armadillo. Well, yeah, I mean, my parents were immigrants, so I learned their little folk songs and stuff. And my father loved opera, so I learned some opera. And my mother loved the Supfgeigen, Hansel, and the old German folk songs. And it just went on and on and on from there. But nowadays, for instance, this morning, I listened because I needed to rest. I listened to the Brahms string sextet, 2 violas, 2 violins, and 2 celli. Beautiful. Just a gorgeous piece. I want to hear it again. Last week, I discovered the Goyescas of Enrique Granados, a Spanish composer from the turn of the century, Once again, these flamboyant Spanish dances played by a really amazing pianist. Granados must have been. I knew one piece of his because Segovia had played it many years ago. It's another record my parents had. So that desire. But when I go to the fitness studio, which I haven't done some time because I've been sick, I rip something off YouTube, and it's always field recordings from Congo or Dahomey or Nigeria. I listen to old field recordings from Africa, and then every day I listen to classical Indian music every day. Um, so it's a mishmash. And that I consider really freedom. I uh, discover musics that I come to love, and so I have tons of bookmarks of these things, in case
What's
I want to.
amazing, Willie, let's just jump into music. Forget all these philosophy questions because
Okay,
I have a brand new music question that just came up, and you're the first one I'm going to ask it. And you can help me if you think the wording should be different
okay.
because of your, and I'm just going to start with that, and then we'll go into all the music questions. Here's how I have it worded right now. Why is 4/4 time the most commonly used time signature in Western music? Then I
Hmm.
can then I can talk and flesh it out more. But is that, is that true? Or is 4/4 time signature were not just Western? Is it common worldwide? So should I say, because I Googled it and I said,
Mhm.
is 4/4 time the most common? The guy who stimulated this said in American music. And then
Hmm.
AI or Google said in Western music.
Wow,
All
interesting.
pe- Of all people, you should know because you work in all kinds of time signatures.
Yeah,
Is it the dominant time signature in Western music or
yeah.
the
I would say 4/4 and 2/4. It's faster, concomitant are the two most.
but
Uh,
why? Why would that be in Western music?
the first thing that comes into my mind is marching.
Wow. Well, marching has been around before Western civilization, right?
That's true. That's true. But if you, I mean, if you think of Europe, it's yum, da-da-dum, dum, dum, da-da-dum, dum, 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 da-dum, yeah, da-da-da, 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 da-dum. Uh, and I loved marches as a kid. I will never play a march again. Another thing I can't play are these young da 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 dum da dum da da. And I said, that's with a triplet. I have to tell you a little anecdote. We did a wonderful show directed by Mary Zimmerman called The Journey to the West.
Yeah.
And if you never saw it, we came to Berkeley with it in, I want to say 96. We went to Boston and went to, did one of her shows that didn't go to Broadway, unfortunately, but it was my favorite show. And I've did a bunch of theater pieces with Mary Zimmerman. The most well known and for which I got awards and stuff was Metamorphosis.
Yeah.
Right. Um, but so I was hired to do the music. I and my then wife Miriam Stern, and we decided we wanted to do a whole, because this is the story of Huan Sung, the Buddhist monk who spent 16 years traveling, walking from China to India to get the Buddhist teachings, right? And this is a story known to each and every Chinese person of the four characters, which of course became the whatever, the Mighty Diamond Turtles and the Star Wars. It was always four, right? And the monk, the pig, who's the symbol of human fleshly desires, whatever. The monkey, who symbolizes the mind, and there are, as you know, millions of monkey tales in Chinese folklore, because the mind is like a monkey that just all over the place, and this kind of big monster who symbolizes pure physical strength. Anyway, for this play, Gerry, we hired Miriam played violin, which she does fabulously. And I played a whole panoply of different instruments, including, a whole bunch of them. But the third musician was a guy from Thailand who played not only the Chinese zheng, zither, multi-string zither, you know, the classic Chinese zither, the big long one. But he also played a Thai instrument, which is kind of a weird, looks sort of like it's called a jacquet. It has a really, really strange sound. And so I had written this flying theme because at one point all of our characters just, you know, leave the ground and they're flying. And this was a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So a minor pentatonic melody in a slow 3/4 thing. And this guy, Sitisak, he wasn't getting it. And I said, well, it's just a simple, I wrote it out for him and everything. And I saw him, you know, we were rehearsing. And he was not grokking this melody. I thought, how can that be? It's just a simple 3/4 or 6/8 rhythm. And then I saw him at lunch. We were all eating, and he was walking around the hall going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I said, what are you doing? He said, you know, Willie, we don't have this rhythm in our music. Wow. I said, what? And sure enough, I started listening to Thai music, and I couldn't hear a single 3/4 or 6/8 in anything. It was all duple time. 3/4/4 and 2/4. Then you go to Iran, for instance, and 80% of the Persian music is in this lilting 6/8, boom baratumta, boom baratumta, boom digga boom baratumta, which is really really symptomatic of Iran. They have that in Pakistan and in Turkey too, but that Iranian 6/8 is just like 3 out of 4 songs are going to be in a 6/8. So it's interesting to think about the ethnic dispersal of rhythms, you know. Yeah. Then I'll listen to this African music and I'll hear clearly it's a 5/8 going on, but because of the way Africans think about rhythm, there's a 7/8 overlaying it and a steady beat underneath it, which is a tick, 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 tick. So you can't even say what that rhythm is. Then you get to India and it's forget Indian rhythm is just out to lunch, you know.
Well, Willy, you know, in research, why is Western music in 4/4? One suggestion was, besides being intuitive and easy, it might be because it syncs up with our heartbeat rhythm. So well, that might not be true, but is the heartbeat?
No, it isn't actually. It's what it syncs up with is, like I said, marching or walking.
Yeah.
You put one foot in front of the other, and that is a 1, 2, 1. And that's why I said marching. But actually, if you listen to a relaxed heartbeat, it's much more, the lub takes longer than the dub. In a normal heartbeat, we're actually listening to something I consider much closer to a 5/8 or a 5/4. Yeah. So dunk, 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 dunk. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
So you know what you made me think? My question should be, what time signature is the heartbeat in?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Every country would be different. But I have to go back for 1 second. When you said this story of the Mary Zimmerman piece, West, you said the monk, the pig, the monkey, and the monster. And
right.
Which the 2, 3, and 4 represented. The pig, a human flesh, the monkey mind, the monster, pure physical strength. What does the monk represent?
Well, the monk is us. The monk is the searcher.
The searcher.
Yeah, the searcher, the man on a quest. And that's what the whole story is. The journey to the West is this quest. And this was a historical figure, this guy. I'm just reading a book by the great William Dalrymple. Do you know his name?
Yeah, William. And
Dalrymple
how do you spell
with
that?
a Y. Dalrymple, called The Golden Road. And he's proving in this book very concretely how India and Indian culture came to be the dominant culture in the world for about 700-800 years, including its influence over China, the entirety of Southeast Asia. It's a fascinating book. And he knows his shit, William Dalrymple. He really does. He's lived in India for many, many years. There's a few things that I read where I take a little issue because I'm not quite sure if he, but no, it's really good. Why did I bring him up? Oh, because he goes on and on. There's a whole chapter about Chuang Tsang, who literally walked for 16 years and then was installed in this monastery somewhere in Tibet or Xinjiang or someplace as a great teacher of Buddhism. But he describes how Buddhism went south. He mentions, there's a whole bunch of videos of him pushing the book on YouTube if you want to see one. They're all very similar. But he mentions how the monsoons were a natural force that drove ships from the Middle East to India for half the year, and then drove them from India to Southeast Asia for the other half of the year. And he goes into big detail about all the Buddha statuettes that were found in what today is Eritrea and stuff, and on the Red Sea coast. We tend to think of the Greek centered culture and so forth that spread around the world, and it's true, but India's importance cannot be overlooked.
Well, back to music, Willie.
Yes, dear.
What's the function of music?
The function of music is to free our bodies and minds. To free our bodies and to free our minds, to liberate.
That's beautiful. Dylan Buston said the function of music is to dance. So that in a way is similar. And John Cage learned from his Eastern philosophy teacher, it's to soothe the soul and make it susceptible for divine intervention.
Yeah.
So
there we have that soul word again.
Yeah. Well, here's the what Copeland says are the four ingredients of music: melody, harmony, rhythm, and tone color. In layperson's terms,
in what? In
layperson's, in not academic music terms, what is tone color?
In layperson's terms, what is tone color?
Because everybody says, well, that's timbre. And I go, well, normal people might not know what timbre is.
Right. I'd say tone color is a pretty adequate description. I mean, people know what a tone is and they know what a color is.
That it explains itself. Then how do you integrate those four? How do you, is there a process you favor melody more, or how do you integrate melody, harmony, rhythm, and tone color? Is there anything you focus on more, or you just integrate them all four equally?
You mean me personally?
When you're writing your own piece of Willy music.
Yeah. Melody, harmony, tone color. Yeah. I haven't really thought that much about the process, to be honest.
No, it comes natural, because that's actually, maybe this question works better. A screenwriting teacher told me great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the opposite. Great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. When you're writing a Willy song,
Yeah,
what role does intention play?
big time. Big time intention.
Yeah. And then Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much are you thinking of your listener when you're
A
writing?
lot. A lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking of how is this going to come across? How can I formulate the words so that they're eloquent, they're not clunky, they're not um, 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 hackneyed. You know, I want to search for you know what somebody was talking about it. I've loved Leonard Cohen since his very first album stuff, but I think among his worst songs, and it's not "Don't Go Home with Your Heart On."
What is it?
Hallelujah.
Oh my God, he disowned.
He did good.
Oh,
I'm so
yeah,
glad to hear.
because Shrek made it too.
Oh man,
There's a whole movie on the song. Yeah,
there's a whole movie on the song.
You know, because it got overblown, and he says,
"Oh, that's horrible." Not only, but as a songwriter, to rhyme "do ya" with and through ya, because you know without and once again, that's an example, Gerry, of people reading great depth into something that really is just a series of images. The other day, I heard it in my head, so I put it on YouTube. Visions of Johanna from Blonde on Blonde. Ain't it just like the night to play tricks when you're trying to be so quiet? We all sit here stranded. We're doing our best to deny it. It's, I mean, that period of Dylan's was just masterful. And as the breakout from all the political shit got on our side and all that stuff, I think it was such a golden time for us.
we were
Because simultaneously it was Sergeant Pepper and the Stones and the Kinks and all that stuff.
Well, listen, Willy, this is funny because they asked Dylan, "Are you a poet?" And he goes, "No, I'm a trapeze artist." That was a great comeback too. But yeah, it's funny you brought up Leonard Cohen because that's my question. Leonard says the only way you can sell a concert is if you put yourself at risk. And if you don't do that, people know. What role does risk play in your creative process?
Definitely in performing. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But then again, it has to do. No. I'd say that applies to any kind of music, really, because you're juggling out there. You're juggling those elements you said, tempo and melody and tone color and harmony, lyrics and all that stuff. So a juggler is a pretty risky character, you know. You could drop one of those balls anytime. And even with something as how shall I say, as pacific as playing a lap in an Indian raga, even so, you know, the Indian raga has its own. It has auch. I'm speaking German now. Its own rules and regulations. So I'd say there's always risk in performing music.
What does courage mean to you now?
Courage.
Yeah.
Courage. Trying to think, what does courage mean? Courage means the ability to go to the doctor even though I fucking don't want to.
Willie, I love you. That is so cool. But here's another one about performing. You brought up that word performing. So this
Yeah.
is Ruth Draper. The
Oh
key
yeah,
the
Ruth
key is
Draper.
to bring the audience up onto the stage and into the scene with you. It is they, the audience, who must give you even more than you give them in the way of imagination and creative power. How do you,
Oh,
that sounds good, but
wait a
how
minute,
do
wait a
you,
minute, wait a minute. That's you got the. Say that again. Say that
right?
whole little body of
Because,
words.
yeah, because see, what I'm asking basically
She
is
was
how
a
do you,
dancer, right? Ruth Draper.
she was an amazing, like she was the person who invented the one woman show. That
Ah, okay.
one woman theatrical performance show. So this
Wow.
is how do you bring the question is basically I'll read the quote in a second, but the question is basically how do you bring the audience up onto the stage with you? How do you engage the audience?
Mm,
So she
mm.
says the key is to bring the audience up onto the
Oh
stage
yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
into the scene with you. She's talking
Mm-hmm.
metaphorically. It is they who must give you even more than you give them in the way of imagination and creative power. So
Hmm.
she's sort of overblowing it. I mean, you're the only
Yeah.
one who listen. Most people I say this quote to, it just flies by them, and they don't. I just say, how do you do that? How do you bring the audience up onto the stage with
And what do they say? What do most people tell you?
well,
No,
that's
I
great.
mean,
No, you're great because usually this is what my wife says. I say, I ask a question and then they answer it, and then I say, well, you should hear what so and so answered,
you
and
have so many quotes. I can't
and
believe it.
but I have this catalog of how my favorite answers to every question.
Oh,
So I
okay.
mean, actually, it is someone in the last week said it's eye contact. How can you
Yeah.
have eye contact with your audience? I mean, and it's their body movement. Like if they're moving their body, but you can misread body movement and eye contact. But yeah, how do you bring, that's the whole point when you're performing. I'll give you the example. Susie, my wife, is a pro singer. She sung Carnegie Hall. She went
Right.
and started singing for Alzheimer's patients,
Oh,
and
yeah.
they were. This was 40 years performing, and then she got a gig doing that, and they're all spaced out, looking off into the sky. And she came home and she was crying
Yeah.
because she felt she didn't connect.
She couldn't reach them. Yeah.
After a year or so or 2 years of doing it, she got used to how they did it, and you'll love the punchline. Abe Burrows, the girl
Yeah.
with the girl with the 3 blue eyes?
No, I don't
She's
know that one.
she's singing this obscure Abe Burrows song, and one of the Alzheimer's patients started singing along.
Wow. Isn't that great?
Music, you don't lose music when you get
Right.
dementia and Alzheimer's.
That's right.
You lose some of it, but you don't lose all of it. That should tell
That's
you something about the magic of music right there.
right.
But
Well,
but
if,
how do because Willie, you've learned how to engage the audience. How do you do that?
well, one thing that I've learned is that when the spotlights are in your face and the audience is black, you've got to take a whole different approach to reaching out to them because you're totally blind up there. You can't see anybody, um, and the way you project is different from when you can, look out, catch somebody's eye, play a,
Yeah.
like an outdoor or if you're an intimate group, and an intimate group is no problem. You're there. You're one of them. You're sitting you're one of the gang. I mean, people playing music like that. You reach out to the fellow musicians, and I mean, but on a big stage with the lights shining down in your eyes and no possibility of we had this group Eclectricity, Bob
I
and
know with Bob
Miriam and I,
Houston.
right.
That's
And
amazing what's on YouTube with that group. That you got some amazing clips there.
well, Miriam played one gypsy piece. I taught her all that gypsy music. I wooed her away from her classical training with gypsy music, um, where she plays this. We recorded it too. She plays this arpeggio in B minor that ends up way, way, way high. It's just like this whistling B minor, and Bob's playing, just whispering very, very. You hardly hear it, and she's going up in the stratosphere. And we were playing. I remember it was in Louisville, Kentucky, and it was one of those situations. Audience completely dark. We couldn't hear what was going, see what anything was going on in the audience. So there was no eye contact or anything. And then it goes from there into a boom, ba-dee-da-dum, so into this slow thing. But it stays there for a second or two. She just stays on that really high note. And we hear this commotion in the audience. We didn't find out till after we got off stage, a woman had had a heart attack.
Wow.
Yeah, a woman had had a heart attack listening to that. we felt very mixed emotions. I mean, there are worse ways to die than from a beautiful note way up in the stratosphere. But
no, it's my wife was playing a show with her swing band, and one of the guys who loved to dance to it died on the dance floor.
Wow. Wow.
I mean, Colonel Bruce Hampton died on stage playing music, and everybody in the audience thought, so I mean, if you're going to go out, I mean, that's like Kurosawa said it best, the filmmaker. He said, how do you want to die? He says, I want to be on the movie set and go, cut, boom.
Yeah. People have asked me that, and I say I want it to be at the end of an applause, and that's it, end of an applause, boom, there goes Willie. You know that Rahsaan Roland Kirk played his absolute last gig in Bloomington, Indiana at the Bluebird. I think it was, when was that, 77 or something? It was, and he got in the cab when it was going, or whatever, the car was going back to the Indianapolis airport to go to his next gig, and passed on there. So the last thing he ever did was play a set at the Bluebird.
I love Roland Kirk. He played three saxophones with two hands.
Yeah, I know.
He had a stroke, and he still played several.
Yeah, I know, unbelievable. And those weren't even saxophones; those were these weird instruments called the stritch and the manzello. I mean, the guy was totally out.
Great Roland story. Him and Roland's playing in a club in LA, and Captain Beefheart's in the audience, and through the whole show they have a conversation because they're both out there. And Zappa had Roland Kirk as a guest in a show once. But, at the end of the concert, Roland goes to Don. He says, "Where can I get ribs at this hour of the night in LA?" And Don goes, "The only place you can get ribs at this hour in LA is in the Bible." Here's another one you probably know.
That's great.
Viola Spolin. She helped invent comedy improv in Chicago as a social worker, doing role-playing exercises. So
when was that? When was that, Jerry?
Second City, all those Saturday Night Live are all based in Viola Spolin. I would say it's in the 60s. I can't say for sure, but you can look it up.
Yeah, I never heard of it.
It goes along with what we're talking about. Her quote is, "If the audience cannot see your struggle to achieve something, they cannot root for you to achieve it." What role does struggle play in your creative process?
Oof, I don't know. I've never been much of a struggler. I've always been a lazy poop.
Well, maybe that's good. It's funny. It's another pro musician I interviewed last week. I says, "What role does risk play in your creative process?" He goes, "I leave it in the dressing room."
That's great.
You want to have confidence and appear that you have confidence, or do you want them to see you struggling? And,
Oh,
that,
no, no.
yeah, and that sometimes endears the audience to you because they're like, oh, they're human, they make a mistake.
Mm, no, I don't like them to see me struggle.
Right. Well, the other one is musicians always tell me, well, the point is to not think, and get in the flow of the music. I'm like, how can you not think? You've got this Rolodex of notes and patterns in your head. Because here,
Yeah.
actually, it leads to the next question, Willie. My friend says the three T's of music are technique, theory, and taste.
Mm,
Technique, you've learned how to play all these
hmm
musical instruments.
hmm
Theory, you know the structure. How
hmm
does one acquire taste?
Mm. Yeah, that's kind of a mysterious thing because taste again is colored by the context in which it appears.
Yeah.
So taste. What did I just see? What are the three?
Well,
Theory,
technique, theory,
technique,
and
theory.
taste.
I just saw it watch for about 4.5 seconds because it was clickbait. A group of South Indian little girls, five,
Yeah.
6 years old, doing Bharatnatyam dance to a horrible computer version of Jingle Bells.
Yeah.
And I just thought that's the most tasteless thing I've seen today.
Yeah.
So taste, people used to play the violin. You know how Itzhak Perelman plays the violin.
Oh, yeah.
Itzhak Perelman plays the violin like how they used to play the violin in 1900. That
Oh,
is Fritz Kreisler and uh, uh, many violinists around here. Vuitton, what's his name? Gingold. All these old violinists used to think nothing of doing this kind of a warbling slide where it goes duh,
yeah.
and then that became in the 30s with fiddlers like Szigeti and Jascha Heifetz and Menuhin. They played much more sort of, one could call it cold, and that was considered absolutely tasteless to play like that. Kitsch, schmaltz, tasteless.
Yeah.
And then along comes Itzhak Perelman and says, no, that's sweet, it's nice. And then sure enough, you listen to klezmer fiddling and stuff, and they're doing all this kind of stuff that actually I took Miriam to hear V.G. Jog one time, famous Indian violinist, and she was just shaking her head. She said, he is doing everything wrong.
Well, how does Yo-Yo Ma fit in that? Is Yo-Yo Ma old school, new school, or what? I mean, he's not
He's,
violin, but
no, he's a cellist. I think he's more old school, actually. I
is
think
he really?
he
Wow.
gives himself over to the to the sort of threnody, the kind of rhapsodic interpretation.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
I
Willie, most people say they get taste from listening, but it's funny how of course it's exposure and listening. Because when I meet young musicians, I say, oh, you should hear, Astor Piazzolla and Hermeto
Mhm.
Pascal and Nina Rota. And then I go, everything I told you, don't go listen to. Just go
Yeah.
hear Piazzolla. How, then that becomes this big thing. Are you retro or rooted? Are you just repeating what's already been done, or
Yeah.
are you rooted in what's been done and you're expanding on it?
Yeah. That's a really tricky area to get in because especially when you're playing traditional musics,
Yeah,
that is a very crucial aspect.
yeah,
For years, the klezmer scene, for instance, was, I know that Miles Carson
Yeah.
and Zev Feldman and Martin Schwarz were three guys who went to the YIVO Institute in New York in I want to say late 60s, and went down in the basement. Now, if you may not know this or not know this, but in the 60s, of course, Yiddish was absolutely verboten among Jews. Everybody had to learn modern Hebrew. Israel, Hebrew, Hebrew. So all this wonderful music of their parents and great grandparents and great great grandparents. Anyway, they found these thousands of 78 RPM discs of all this great music from the 20s, from the 10s, 20s, 30s, 40s, the Yiddish theater, and on and on. And of course, the first years were mostly of these groups were going for authenticity because they wanted to get those kreichts just the way the fiddlers had played them or the clarinetists had played them back there, because that's what they thought makes klezmer music, and they were right. But at the same time, it was only a few people who said, okay, we got that, but we want this to grow from within, and jazz is the same way. I mean, man, people go to music school and they learn Charlie Parker's solos note for note, as if it was a Bach etude or something, and then of course that's going to influence their further thing. So it's a very tricky thing about tradition. What was the question?
Yeah, no, it really wasn't a question. It was just that how does one really it came from how does one acquire taste? And from listening, and then what do you do with that? But here's actually the follow-up question on the taste, Willie, because since what's called world music, I mean, before it was just there was music from all kinds of countries, and then they had to design a category to sell it in the record stores.
That's right.
It was Olatunji. We already knew Olatunji's music, world music, but it's okay because it helped people grow and learn from all over the world. But here's McLuhan said two things here, but you can mainly tackle the second or both. He said, song is slowed down speech. The reason cultures have different musical taste is ultimately connected to language difference. So this is something you're deeply engaged in. Is musical taste different? Like, can everybody listen to the Balinese music or the tuba throat singers or Indian, music? Is it connected to language difference?
Is it connected to language?
Is musical taste connected to language differences?
Not necessarily.
Right.
I mean, because music, especially if we're not talking about text, where it's crucial to understand the meaning and the subtleties of the lyrics or the text, then you need a translation. But if we're talking about pure music, listen to a Javanese gamelan, and you don't need any language to express that. You just say, wow.
Yeah. But that's like the tuba throat singers. When we first heard them, I thought this is transcendental. But then we found out they sing about three things: their horses, their boots, and the snow. And I'm like, man, they must be singing something deeper than that.
No. No, and I mean, that's interesting. Their horses, their boots,
in the snow.
And the snow, yeah, that's probably right. No, actually, my friend Uli Balz has this label. He's put up all my stuff out there. It's called Jaro Median, Jaro. He's here in Bremen since many, many, many years. He books them along with the Bulgarian babes and
the Bulgarian women's choir. Yeah.
Yeah, he books them all over Europe, and he books and he does experimental things like putting the two of them together, which is very bizarre. And he booked some American groups like Hazmat Modine. Have you ever heard of them? It's a New York
I
band.
want to look them up. I love you.
Nah, it's all right. But yeah, he wrote a book about his trip to Tuva, and I'm sure they sing about more than their boots in the snow.
Well, this is what
After all, they are not only Buddhists, but they're shaman Buddhists. So
Oh, I think really? Wow.
yeah. They're very heavily shamanic, but they were influenced again by this spread from India of Buddhism, which went past their neighborhood all the way up to China.
Well, Willie, what's more fundamental, music or language?
What's more fundamental? I would say for society, strictly speaking, languages.
Yeah.
Languages. You can't rescue somebody from who fell through the ice with music.
That's
But
that's funny you said that, because this woman on NPR, she's a famous author, and she said, my mom was raised in the Caribbean and she never read books because of her culture, but she knew what to do when a tsunami hit because one of the songs she sang told her.
yeah, well, that's certainly the other side of that. And of course, there's children learn language through music.
Yeah.
You know, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. A 3-year-old can recite the alphabet only because of that melody that's connected with it.
Does it.
Yeah.
Tell me an instrumental that makes you laugh.
Instrumental that makes me laugh. Wow. An instrumental that makes me laugh. Oh, God, what was I just listening to? I wanted to send it to somebody as a comment on their YouTube. I have a whole whole iTunes library, and there's nothing in it that I've downloaded from iTunes Store. Nothing, not a single thing. It's all just packed with stuff I've recorded over the years. What was it tonight? Oh, I know what it was. Oh yeah, I was watching. There's these two guys, Daniel Mate and what's his name, Lieb. They're two American Jews who have this podcast called Bad Hasbara.
Yeah,
and it's good. If there's anybody that can actually make you laugh about the current situation of Israel and Jews and Palestine and so on, it's these two idiots, because they really are funny. Daniel Mate's brother is Aaron Mate, who, podcasts with Katie Halper and is very often on political things. Aaron's not as funny. Daniel's very funny. And Daniel's a lyricist and used to write musicals and stuff. But every week he brings in records. And they start the show with this sort of innocuous, what's spinning this week. And he said, well, I was thinking back to the days when Israeli music, this is sort of pre-1967, had this, and I mean, for me, it's a big subject because as a kid, I met Theodore Bickel. Theodore Bickel was my idol. Between Bickel and Ustinov, yeah. Multi-language, being able to sing stuff convincingly in many, many languages. And here Theo had made album after album of songs from all over the world, from Russian gypsy, but also this early Israeli stuff, and like when they were you know, all right, they were finished with the Nachbar, and then they started taking biblical texts and making beautiful Dorian melodies out of it. But anyway, one of the records he brought in was a duo called the Parvarim. And the Parvarim, I tried to put the link to the Parvarim singing Feeling Groovy by Simon and Garfunkel in Hebrew in 1967, because that's a piece of music that really makes me laugh.
That's beautiful. Willy,
But I have this whole category in my archives called ridiculous, and there's dozens and dozens of stuff that I've found over the years. You know, stuff from occupied Japan, for instance, Japanese rumba, yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, all this cross-cultural, you know, mishigas. So that stuff definitely makes me laugh.
No, that's good, because humor's a healing force like music. And Theodore Bickel's in Frank Zappa's film 200 Motels.
I know.
It's amazing.
One of the weirdest matchups of all time.
Yeah, well, the New York Times called Frank the Orson Welles of rock in the movie, you know, the movie review. But anyways,
I've never seen the movie 200 Motels.
Oh, dude, it's beyond art. It's the most non-cliche rock film ever made. But anyways, Willy, I asked for 90 minutes. Sorry, past 90.
Even more non-cliche than Big Time. Ever seen Tom Waits? Yeah. The movie we made in 1987.
You find that film to be cliche?
No, I find it to be absolute everything other than
non-cliche. Oh yeah, my favorite comment about that film is they asked Waits, "What do you think of you being on the big screen?" He says, "Well, when I turn around and you can see my underwear sticking out, it's so big." that film was very rare, and they never put it on DVD, and then it was only on VHS.
I know.
Yeah, no, I mean
and then somebody went in and remixed it. You know that we traveled all over America and Europe, and Tom had this old attaché case, one of those old leather, you know, businessman's attaché cases, filled to the brim, overflowing, in fact, with cassettes of the concerts we had done. So every single concert, and he would stay up till late at night listening to these things, you know, and and originally the original Big Time, the album that came out then, was mixed from those cassettes from 1 1/8 to 7/8 inch.
Are you kidding?
No. And then somebody, because that film was Nicholas Roeg's son. What was his name?
Is it Nick Roeg's son? Wow, I didn't know
that. Yeah. Waits didn't want to go on tour at all, but Chris Blackwell bribed him with the film and said, "I'm getting Chris Roeg." What was his name? Anyway,
I'll look it up. That's amazing.
And Waits said, "Okay, I'll do it, but only if I can take my family." And I'd be like back smoking a cigarette behind a stage door in Paris or something, and people would come up and say, "Is Tom shooting up back there?" I said, "No, Tom's kissing his kids." It's like, you know, everybody had this image that he's always drunk and whatever.
No, that's amazing, because, you know, Willy, I asked for 90 minutes. We're past 90. We got to do a part 2, because we only got into a fraction of what I really want to get into music a lot deeper. So if you don't mind, maybe we can plan a part 2 down the line a little.
Okay, down the line is good.
Yeah, and let's close out this one, because I'm glad you mentioned Waits, because especially, you know, I'm a big fan of Mark Rebo, and he said yes.
Oh yeah.
And then now he's too busy. He got to put out a book, and he's, you know, do you stay in touch? Yeah. Do you stay in touch with Mark? You ever see his?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's an amazing guy.
He and his trio played at the Elfie here. You know what the Elfie is?
Yeah, you mean
Yeah.
that bass player? I interviewed him. He's an amazing guy. That's called Porcelain. No, what are they called? The trio. It's the drummer,
Right,
the bass,
right.
Mark Rebo. Yeah.
Right. They played at the Elb Philharmonic here, the Elfie, in the small hall. That was a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
But we hung out afterwards and went with a bunch of people, you know,
Yeah.
what you do late at night after a show. And it was totally nice. I'm still in touch with Greg, too, Greg Cohen.
Greg Cohen's amazing, too.
Yeah. Do you see him? I mean, you're in LA. You see him every now and then?
know. Does Greg live in LA?
Yeah. He's been back in LA for quite a while.
Oh, hook me up.
He was in Berlin for a number of years, but he kind of got screwed over by these jazz people in Berlin.
Wow.
He's such a great guy, knows so much. Great musician, great brain, funny. The worst punster this side of the Monongahela.
Well, I'm into punsters amazingly, especially because of my interest in James Joyce Finnegan's Wake.
Oh, yeah.
How about this? Where the hand of man never set foot.
That's great.
People think Finnegan's Wake's unreadable. That sounds like a, Beavis and Butthead joke or something.
Yes, it does. It does.
Okay, but yeah, hook me up with Greg Cohen. I'd love to invite him. But let's close out this first part, Willie, and it's really been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been fun.
I've learned so much. How has playing music, writing music, shaped your behavior?
Shaped my behavior. I mean, it's such an integral part of who I am that I'm afraid it's impossible for me to analyze that from within. I mean, I've been a professional musician since 1964.
Wow.
My mother was our manager, so shaped my behavior. I think like a musician, but then again, I don't think like a classical musician. I don't think like a folk musician, actually.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's funny because you nailed it with Quincy Jones just dying.
Yeah.
Nadia Boulanger told Quincy.
Did he study with her?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
She told him, your music can never be more or less than you are as a human being. I don't know what that means, but it's sort of like, see, you played music for 60 years.
Yeah.
How could you figure out how it shaped your behavior? I
mean, yeah, it's such an integral part of me. But I like that quote very much. Your music can never be more or less
than you are as a human being.
Than you are as a human being. It can never be more, can never be less. Yeah. That's something to chew on.
Thank you so much, Willie. I really appreciate your time and energy. You are super cool.
And it's really been great talking to you, Gerry. I didn't know what to expect, but this has been great.
Well, we'll have more fun in part 2 and dig deeper into all these things. And even though I'm going to hit the end broadcast button now, I hope this never ends and we can keep talking forever and ever. Thank you.
All right, man. Be well.
Love you. Thank you, Willie.
Bye-bye.